Did you know that just 10 countries produce more than 70% of the world's oil, and a few of them could flood the market almost overnight if they wanted to? What's even crazier is that some countries are already pumping at full speed, while others are holding back millions of barrels per day on purpose. That hidden spare capacity is one of the most powerful weapons in the global economy. Today, we're not just naming the top oil producers. We're going deeper. How much oil do they actually produce right now? How much could they produce if they pushed their systems to the limit? Because the top few countries on this list might completely change how you see the oil world. Number 10. Kuwait. Kuwait produces around 2.8 to 3 million barrels of oil per day. That may not sound massive compared to the giants, but here's the key detail: Kuwait has the capacity to produce over 3.5 million barrels per day if needed. Most of its oil comes from a small number of extremely productive fields, including the famous Burgan field, one of the largest oil fields ever discovered. Kuwait operates fewer than a dozen major oil production facilities, but they are highly efficient. Because the oil is easy to extract, production costs are very low. This gives Kuwait flexibility. When prices fall, Kuwait can still make money while higher-cost producers struggle. Number 9. Brazil. Brazil currently produces about 3.5 to 4 million barrels per day, and its production has been rising steadily. What makes Brazil unique is that most of its oil comes from deepwater offshore platforms. The country operates more than 100 offshore production units, many of them floating platforms located far from the coast. Brazil's maximum potential production is estimated at over 5 million barrels per day in the coming years as new offshore fields come online. These fields are expensive to develop, but once they're running, they produce large volumes for decades. Brazil is slowly turning into a long-term oil heavyweight. Number 8. United Arab Emirates. The UAE produces roughly 4 million barrels of oil per day, but here's the important part: it can produce close to 5 million barrels per day if required. Most of this oil comes from Abu Dhabi, which controls nearly all of the country's reserves. The UAE runs dozens of onshore and offshore facilities, including massive fields like Zarqam and Upper Zarqam. It doesn't always produce at maximum levels, which gives it strategic power inside global oil markets. When supply is tight, the UAE can step in quickly. Number 7. Iran. Iran produces about 3.8 to 4 million barrels per day under normal conditions. But Iran's true production capacity is closer to 5.5 to 6 million barrels per day. The gap exists mainly because of sanctions, not geology. Iran operates hundreds of oil wells and several major oil-producing regions, including Khuzestan. The infrastructure already exists. If political restrictions were lifted, Iran could increase exports rapidly, potentially pushing global oil prices down. That's why Iranian oil is such a sensitive topic in global politics. Number 6. China. China produces around 4.2 to 4.5 million barrels of oil per day. It has thousands of oil wells spread across onshore fields and offshore platforms. However, China's maximum production capacity is limited, sitting only slightly higher than current levels. China consumes more than 15 million barrels per day. That means even though it's a top producer, it remains heavily dependent on imports. China's oil strategy focuses less on expanding production and more on securing supply from abroad and building massive refining capacity at home. Number 5. Iraq. Iraq produces about 5 million barrels per day, but its potential production is far higher. Experts estimate Iraq could produce 7 to 8 million barrels per day with proper investment and stability. Iraq has over 70 discovered oil fields, but only a fraction are fully developed. The country operates dozens of major facilities, many of which are aging or underutilized. Iraq's oil is cheap and abundant. Its biggest challenge isn't oil, it's infrastructure, politics, and security. Number 4. Canada. Canada produces around 5.5 to 6 million barrels per day, mostly from oil sands in Alberta. These are not traditional oil wells. They are massive industrial operations involving mining, processing plants, and upgrading facilities. Canada's production capacity is estimated at over 7 million barrels per day, but expansion depends heavily on pipelines and environmental regulations. Canada runs some of the largest oil processing facilities on Earth, but production costs are higher than in the Middle East. Canada is a key supplier to global markets. especially North America. Number 3, Russia. Russia produces roughly 10 to 10.5 million barrels per day. At full capacity, Russia can reach around 11 to 12 million barrels per day. It operates thousands of oil wells and hundreds of production facilities across vast territory. Russian oil fields stretch from Siberia to the Arctic. While many fields are aging, Russia continues to invest in new projects. Oil and gas revenues fund a significant portion of the Russian government, making energy exports central to its global influence. Number 2, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia produces about 10 to 11 million barrels per day, but this is where things get interesting. Saudi Arabia can produce up to 12.5 million barrels per day. And it can do so faster than almost any country on earth. Saudi Arabia operates some of the largest oil facilities ever built, including Ghawar, the biggest oil field in history. The country deliberately holds spare capacity, using it to stabilize, or pressure, the global market. No other country has this level of control over short-term oil supply. And finally, number 1, the United States. The United States is the world's largest oil producer, pumping over 12.5 million barrels per day. At peak capacity, the US can produce around 13 to 14 million barrels per day. The US operates tens of thousands of wells and hundreds of processing facilities, especially in shale regions like Texas and North Dakota. Unlike traditional oil giants, US production can rise and fall quickly based on prices. This flexibility has completely reshaped global oil markets. So what's the big picture here? Oil production isn't just about how much oil is in the ground. It's about technology, infrastructure, politics, and strategy. Some countries are maxed out, others are holding back millions of barrels per day as leverage. And as long as the world still runs on oil, these 10 countries will continue to shape prices, power, and global stability, often in ways most people never notice. The real question isn't who produces the most oil today. It's who will still control energy tomorrow. If you found something useful, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, so you don't miss what's coming next.